Update. My brother-in-law called me the one who got away in his speech, and my husband is very hurt, and it is all my fault. Original post. I don't know what to do. I think I have done serious damage to my marriage before it even began. I met my husband through his brother Chris, who I had a crush on in college. I never was clingy or ever acted on my feelings, and I never really allowed myself to get too close to him because I knew that my feelings weren't reciprocated. Chris knew, however, I had a crush on him, or at least he felt it. He would always say that I was girlfriend material and how he wouldn't want to lead me on. He wanted to have fun before that. He would say this to others, but even once to me. On 2 occasions, he would text me that he had feelings for me, only to apologize later and retract his words. But on Christmas 4 years ago, he texted me that he was in love with me and wanted to take me out on a date. He said he was done playing around and wanted a relationship. He was invited to a New Year's Eve party that my then roommate and I had, and he told me he wanted to talk to me then. When he came to the party, he had his brother with him. Chris spent the party going out of his way to ignore me, and later I saw him making out with my roommate, and they spent the night in her room. I decided there and then that I will drop it. Enough is enough. Next morning, he told me that he messed up, and he apologized. During the party, I got to know his brother, who was the opposite of Chris. He was shy and hated attention, and he was just the best. And soon after, he asked me on a date. We are married now. Our wedding was last Wednesday. I want to make 2 things clear. I never went beyond a crush on Chris. And only after I fell for my husband that I understood what love is. He is everything to me, and I love him more than anything. I never told anyone about my crush, and when I met my husband, I didn't tell him either. Chris wasn't happy I was seeing his brother, and he's been cold towards me since, even when it got serious between my husband and I. Chris held a speech in our rehearsal dinner, and he basically outed everything, and ended with how he regretted not asking me out sooner, and how he will always regret it. It was very awkward afterwards, and nobody talked. And on our wedding day, my husband did everything to act normal, and he made sure everything was as planned, but I could feel that he was hurt and angry. After the party, he asked me if I loved Chris, and if I dated him for that reason. I started crying because it's absolutely not true. We started dating and became friends, and I made sure it was him I wanted before committing, and I never loved anyone like I love my husband. I told him all this and more, and I apologized so much for not telling him everything. In the beginning, I thought it was my own private matter, and I didn't feel the need to discuss it with a then stranger to me. When our relationship evolved, I just never thought Chris was relevant, and my crush seemed a silly thing. Now it's back to bite me in the butt. My husband is very sad, and he barely talks to me. We're leaving for our honeymoon in 2 weeks, and he barely speaks about it. The thing we both waited for with so much anticipation and longing. I don't know what to do. I can't turn back time, so I don't know what to do. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Some people's family leaves me dumbfounded. I think your husband will be fine eventually, but I don't think he will be fine with you spending time with his brother anytime soon, if ever. What a crappy dude to do that to his own brother and his wife. I'm sorry you got that as a brother-in-law. To be honest, I never spent time with Chris. Not without my husband anyway. As I said, Chris was probably not happy about our relationship and has been cold towards me since. We never discussed it. He never confronted me or mentioned it to me or my husband. This screams misery loves miserable company. You were not the one who got away. Chris was too busy sowing his wild oats. Now Chris couldn't have you, so he planted seeds of doubt with your husband so he couldn't have you either. Try to get at least 1 marriage counseling session in before your honeymoon. Good luck. This is depressing but probably true. What I can't understand is why now? Why not earlier before his brother makes a commitment? It's because he never cared about his brother. I can tell you exactly why, because he is a narcissist. He likes lording your past feelings over his brother because it gives him validation. In Chris's mind, he wins because you had a crush on him first. It's also why he slept with your roommates knowing that you expected him to ask you out at that party. He loved that you chased him, and he slept with your roommate to show himself that he could do whatever he wanted, and you would still want him. When you didn't do that, He got mad and held a grudge. Did Chris bully your husband growing up? Take things from him? Sleep with his girlfriends? Anything like that? Because you describe traits in him that make him seem like an egomaniac or sociopath. And I wouldn't be surprised if he screwed over your husband so often growing up that your husband developed an inferiority complex which is contributing to his trust issues now. Maybe the best thing you and your husband can do is go to couples therapy to reveal the extent of the damage done. There could be a lot of baggage contributing to this that you just don't know about, and you not telling him about your crush might have been the straw that broke the camel's back here. I don't understand why your husband is angry at you. How is it your fault? What did you apologize for to your husband then? For having crush on someone, never being involved with him, realizing that he's a POS and moving on? You never dated his brother, never even made out with him, never told him about your feelings, right? Did his brother insinuate that you did? Or was he talking about his feelings only? You were not responsible for his brother's feelings and his awful behavior at your wedding, and in general. It does look like his brother planned to ruin your relationship, and if your husband let him do it, it is his choice and his issues. None of it is your fault. Give your husband a link to this post. Tell him that you have nothing to apologize for. He can take it or leave it. Tell him that annulment is possible, and you'd prefer it over walking on eggshells around him when you clearly did nothing wrong. If he is still blaming you, he is not mature enough to be married. Also, it looks like he is blaming you because he cannot stand up to his brother and call him out. So, he is dumping his anger on a person who didn't deserve it. It is not cool, and I would call him out on it. Even if your husband will throw a fit and your marriage is done, go on honeymoon alone, have fun, enjoy your freedom, don't punish yourself for their unhealthy rivalry. I wish you all the best. My husband is probably more hurt and thinks he was a consolation prize than angry. He thinks if it was as nothing as I'm telling him, I would have told him. Chris didn't go into details about my feelings more than that we had a crush on each other. He talked about how he was the one who introduced my husband and I, not knowing it would lead to marriage, and how the day I met my husband was actually supposed to be our first date if he didn't ruin it by getting cold feet and start drinking instead, and that he regretted it and I was the one who got away, yada yada. I told my husband everything I wrote here, but he's still very hurt and depressed. I wish he knew how much he means to me. He is not speaking to his brother at all. Chris hasn't reached out to him to apologize either. He just texted me an apology and blamed it on drunkenness, and again that he messed up. This is the first text I get from Chris since college. This is how little we have communicated all these years. Now for the update. I have a small update. I was supposed to write it yesterday, but I was exhausted. Yesterday, my husband and I were invited to my in-laws for a cookout. When we arrived, Chris Haas and Travis Camper. Well, nobody expected us to show up, and my husband wanted to decline, but I insisted we go. I caught Chris, however, and loudly said, "Oh, I'm happy you are here, because I want to talk to you." I said that since the people in this cookout were all in the rehearsal dinner, I wanted them to listen too. Chris looked like he was about to cry, but my father-in-law was grabbing his arm when he tried to excuse himself. I told Chris that what he did was a horrible thing, that it didn't just hurt me, but it hurt his brother even more, and that the only reason I didn't speak up was because I was in shock. But also because I didn't want to ruin our day by arguing back and forth with an arrogant and selfish man who always hid behind alcohol to explain his bad behaviors, like he's some tween. I told him that I never was the one that got away, because he never had me. I never knew the real him, that I liked his exterior like I was sure many people who didn't know him well did. But if it ever would have evolved to something more, I would have seen through his facade. And since I know myself very well, I would never have fallen for someone like him. So I was never the one that got away. I told him that the only good thing about him in my eyes, the only redeeming quality, is that he decided to bring his brother with him that night. And even if I was very angry with him now, I will always be thankful to him. And I will always be grateful that I crossed paths with him because it led me to my husband. And for you to not even call to apologize to your brother for embarrassing him and hurting his feelings says a lot about how much you have planned to hurt him on his day. My husband was silent the whole time. The mood was a bit awkward for a minute after my outburst, but then people were normal and some apologized for what happened and we ended up having a good time. When we got home, my husband, who's been sleeping in the living room almost every night, hugged me and kissed me. The first time he kissed me since the I do, and I just felt my anger building up again, and I had another outburst. I told him that we weren't okay, and that he never has the right to shut me out and give me the silent treatment for so long ever again, if he wanted to stay married to me. He said, I know, and that he regretted his coldness. We made love for the first time as a married couple, and second, third, and fourth, and then I fell asleep in his arms in our bed. After 2 outbursts on 2 brothers in one day, I felt content, and I slept very well. This morning my husband woke me up with kisses and hugs, and he apologized for hurting me and taking out his anger on me. He said shock was too great for him, and he was afraid that I didn't love him and just settled for him because Chris is the charmer and always had it easy to be loved by people. He thought something more happened, and he didn't dare to ask me because he wasn't mentally prepared to hear that the love of his life maybe wasn't his. He looked his old cheerful self that I missed so much. I just wanted to cry, but I didn't. We discussed therapy and we are planning to start looking for a therapist after our honeymoon. But for now, I just wanted to snuggle him and feel his love. He has a lot of making up to me to do. I hope this counts as an update. Good night. Edit. Many ask about Chris's reaction. He just cried and mumbled that he had somewhere to go and left. No apology or anything. Wasn't expecting that either. Mother-in-law was angry with me, but I was just so angry everything just came out. Last story. My husband's best friend took his own life the day we got married. I just need to air my feelings to someone because I'm so confused and sad and angry, and I feel so guilty that I feel this way. My 30 female husband's best friend took his own life while we were getting married. We found out the next day as we landed abroad on our honeymoon. A little bit of background. We had a tiny wedding with just us and 11 close family members, and it was a beautiful day. So intimate and filled with love, we were so happy. We didn't have an evening reception. We just went home and finished packing for an early flight the next morning. We landed, and as soon as the phones were turned back on, we got the heartbreaking news. Then had a week abroad on a honeymoon trying to process what had happened. How and why, and so many unanswered questions. I tried my best to keep my husband's mind off it most of the time, but it was really difficult for us both. We reminisced about all the good times and funny stories we had. The guy didn't have a bad bone in his body. He was the most selfless, caring person we knew, and we would have given him anything he needed to have not made that decision that day and still be here with us. He helped us with anything and everything. He was a jack of all trades and could fix or build almost anything. I could never describe him in words how amazing he was in life. We found out more details from his wife when it happened. A 3-hour window the day we were married, when we would have been in our ceremony, having time alone, the 2 of us in our little convertible, and having photographs taken afterwards. I remember feeling during that time the happiest and most content I've ever felt in my entire life. Now when I think about that time, my heart just breaks. I just feel so guilty for being so happy at that time, and he was in the worst place of his life. I also feel like a horrible, selfish person because I'm so mad with him. Doing that on what should have been his best friend's happiest day of his life, and it's forever tarnished. Every year, our wedding anniversary is the anniversary of his death. Forever a bittersweet day. I don't know how to grieve. I've never lost someone so close naturally. Lucky to have younger parents and grandparents, let alone by their own doing. I don't know how to process it, but I want to be the best support for my husband. If this is how I'm feeling inside, I can't imagine how he is. I just feel callous for being mad at the best friend. I feel so guilty for having such happy memories of that day, and I feel so useless because I can't fix this for my husband. I hope this has made sense if you've read to this point. Edit to add, I don't at all think he chose that particular day. I imagine he didn't consider at all what we were doing. I think it just all got too much for him on that day and came to a head, so he chose to do it there and then. For all those saying he was probably in love with my husband or myself, that absolutely wasn't the case. There were things in his life that led him to this, but out of respect for him and his family, I don't want to disclose them on here. I feel bad for saying this, but he might not have felt very good about not being invited to the wedding of his best friend, and that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. He was invited. I've never said he wasn't invited. Did he decline an invitation to the wedding? I'm sorry your happy memories are overshadowed by his actions. Your feelings are valid, and I wish you peace going forward. Wasn't that bothered about weddings, and we had a really small casual last-minute thing. He also knew my husband's anxiety with lots of attention being on him, so I can only imagine he declined to help us keep the attendance small so he would enjoy the day. Your feelings are valid. I can understand why you feel like a bad person, but please don't. It's completely reasonable. I'm sorry for the loss of your husband's best friend. I'm sorry that he felt so desperate to be rid of the pain he was in, and I'm sorry that he didn't see any way out of it. In most cases, people take their lives because they don't see the point in living anymore, and they see themselves as a burden to other people. They are in that much pain that they can't see beyond it, and are unable to comprehend how heartbroken their loved ones will be. He must have been battling with this for some time to get to this point. I hope his family are also as okay as can be. I'm sorry that what should have been the happiest day of your life has been tarnished with such painful memories. Sending you love. My son was stillborn 4 days before my 3rd wedding anniversary, and my wedding anniversary has been overshadowed by his death for 9 years. Now I'm divorced, but his birth and death day remains the same. I understand grieving through happy times. I was supposed to have a newborn on my 3rd wedding anniversary, but instead I was waiting for an urn. It's been 12 years this month. How about next year you do a renewal ceremony, like 6 months after the original date? Have a big party with your friends and then reset the wedding anniversary to the new, untarnished date. This sounds like a lovely idea. I'm sure everyone will understand why you're doing it. And if not, you can kindly explain to them that you feel that it will be too difficult to process moving forward, celebrating your wedding every year with such overhanging tragedy, and that you want time to grieve properly away from everything else.